This is my personal friend, Jason Clark with VS Studios. I mean, I could read all your accolades, but the reality is that Jason has been a staple, I'm going to say that, in our creative community for so many years. And I'm not dating you, but not so many years, but some years. And you have won all the awards and all the amazing things, and that's awesome and shiny. But what I love about you is the reason, and you were like, why are you asking me to do this thing, right? You have been the give back person from the beginning. Like, you have always been there anytime that anyone needs anything, to mentor, to help, to teach. And you always step up in such a beautiful way. And so I thought, hey, let's start this with someone who shares all the values that we share here. So Jason Clark. Hey. All right, I'm gonna now try to do this thing.
Okay. Hello, everyone. All right, so my first dare for all of you here and at home, 2 weeks from now on the YouTube channel, when you're watching this thinking, what the hell just happened? I want everybody to close their eyes, okay? I always hated these group activities in these kind of speeches, but hopefully this is interesting. So close your eyes. You can talk or chat or whatever. But does anybody see anything? Tell me what you see. Somebody shout something out. Yellow blobs.
Flashes of light.
Blotches of light. Green triangles. There's a Muppet Sesame Street song about this. I'll play it for you later one day. Yeah, so squeeze your eyes real tight. What happens? Those lights change. The colors change. You might, if you did that long enough, you might start to see weird little, I don't know, dogs or cats or hallucinations or something. Wilhelm Reich, some weird philosopher from ages ago, called what you saw there orgone energy, which is another weird talk on its own. We're not going to go there. But what I like to think that is the brain, your brain trying to make sense of what it's seeing or not seeing. So that's why, when you close your eyes and you start to fall asleep and those weird shapes start to turn into people that you know and memories that you have and just weirder stuff, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about your brain today. So thanks for taking on that first dare. And again, if you didn't do that when you were watching the YouTube later, I want you to rewind and do it again because it's kind of fun. My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. So that was spoken by a Nikola Tesla, if you know this guy, competitor to Thomas Edison. And lots of people talk about this place that they draw inspiration from. When you're in your flow state, it is a lot of times it doesn't feel like you. It really feels like you're just channeling something interesting. When I'm at my most creative, I never feel like it's me that's creating. It's like I'm just the vessel. And I think that's where we all want to go. This isn't an about me story, but I want to start because I think there's some context here. I was a cute little nerdy kid that grew up in kind of lower middle class trailer park. That's me. But my career path did not take a traditional direction. In my adolescent years, right? I had a lot of fun. I played in bands. I got weird. This is, I think I was 15 here, and it was the early 80s, mid 80s, and oh man, woo, what a time to be alive. So even on into my early to late 20s, I started in design in high school. I was in a graphic arts program my junior and senior year, but I always had hobbies and passions that kind of like, I don't know, I was a weirdo. So my career path was not a straight, it can be considered a straight line because I've always been involved in design, but my hobbies and my music passions and whatnot were also part of this. So needless to say, I didn't make a lot of money back then. I was probably okay at what I did. So once I started to get serious about my career, I had a job at a big organization in town as a designer. And I started to get serious about what I did. And I started to get good at what I did. So I got a job offer that was, I think at this place I was making $18,000 a year. And oh my goodness, this job offer was like 1.5 times that. And so I told my boss there, and at the place that I was working, and my boss told me, Jason, the real world isn't a place for you and I. Like I'll give it away. I worked at U of L. It's a really easy place to work, or at least it was back in the early 90s. But yeah, my boss was discouraging me. And that's a line I'll never forget. The real world isn't a place for people like us. We couldn't make it in the real world. I went back maybe 3 or 4 years after that conversation, and I owned my own business, owned 3 businesses at the time. I was involved with Via Studio already. I was a founding partner of the Y Louisville store with Will Russell, and doing some other stuff. So it was nice to have that conversation with this person. But one of the things that really got me, because of the weird path that I took, is like, what is this real world you're talking about? I don't live in that world. You live in that world, and you have a set of expectations about what the world is that I do not, and I don't accept that. So yeah, a few years ago, AIGA gave me this Visionary Award. The Business First, all of these just amazing accolades that I didn't ask for or want. And I think a lot of this is because I chose my own adventure, and I didn't think about opportunities in the way that everybody, this mental model. So that's what we're going to get into, models. Who likes to go camping? I love to go camping. We bought a short school bus last year during COVID and converted it into a camper. Would you guys go camping in this Lego right here? No. This might be a little bit more comfortable, but it's still not a camper, right? It's just a model. So if you're going to go camping, you need an actual camper. So that is what your brain is always doing. Your brain is creating models of reality based on what it perceives the real world to be. So the same thing with maps. If you wanted to go to Italy, what the hell is this, Italy? Maybe? So you can't point right there and say, okay, I'm in Italy now, right? But that's the way our brain works with the things that we see and hear and feel. What you're actually seeing and hearing and feeling are a model of what reality actually is. So there's a saying that I love, and it keeps my brain in that place on a regular basis. The map is not the territory. So almost everything that you see and experience in this world, and what you read and what you believe, is a map or a model of what reality really is. Your brain has to put that grid on top of what it's perceiving. But it's not reality. It's just the perception of reality. So we all saw these 2 brain exercises in the last year or 2, right? The dress and the audio experiment, right? Just for the record, the dress is white and gold, and it's Yanny. And if you disagree, you're wrong. But this is I didn't say beep. But this is a really, really good example of how your brain's working. You've got a model of what you expect to see. And so your brain just says, boom, that's what it is. And then somebody else says, wait, what's the other color that people see here? Blue? I don't know. They hear a laurel over there. So your brain's made this map of reality, and it hears this thing and it interprets it entirely different than what somebody else perceives. So this little couple pounds of mush here is constantly interpreting your entire reality. Sometimes it's more accurate. Sometimes it looks like that Lego set. It also discards things that it doesn't see as useful information. So that, like, on your peripheral vision and whatnot. So your eyes, your ears, your senses, they're all working together and forming maps inside your brain of what reality is. So because of that, everything is real. All of your beliefs, your religions, your, unfortunately, political ideologies, like, every map of reality is real in some way because it forms a shape in somebody's mind, and it's real to them. Just like Yanny and Laurel, right? It's real to the person who hears something entirely different than you. So that's exciting, but there's also kind of the flip. Nothing is real. Nothing. It is all an interpretation in your mind of what you're seeing and hearing. So for me, that's exciting. And I pull a lot of inspiration from that. You can think of artists like Picasso, scientists like Galileo, where, how they're interpreting and seeing reality is blasphemy. It's not real. And that's because these people's models of reality is entirely different than what this person is perceiving. And they open a door and it's like, oh, wow, reality is this too. Oh, wow, reality is this. And, it's just super exciting. But what that also means, and what kind of brings us down to earth, is that that's not real either. You open the door a little bit wider, and that's also an illusion. So it pays to not be super attached to your models. So I just read a really awesome book. It's called, it was about a band in the late 80s, I think, called the KLF. And they took all the money that they made from being pop stars. Go look up the KLF if you don't know who they are. They made some really fun music. But they burned all the money that they made. It was like £1 million British pounds. And they made a movie of themselves just burning all this money. Because to them, the model of money and the belief that we have that money has value is something that they were challenging. Now, that's something that's like, that's crazy. You're full of shit. You could have donated that money. So some people's model of reality, they're crazy. Other people's model of reality, that's, an artistic statement. But the concept here is, in this book, is called multiple model agnosticism. So I love this concept. It is essentially the ability, if you can read this, multiple model agnosticism. Out of all of the billions of people in the world, you are the only one who really gets it, and everyone else are idiots. Like, it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful sentiment, because we see this a lot in the world now. You could turn this conversation into what's happened in the world the last few years, but I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to inspire you, not depress you. But anyway, that's like, if you find yourself stuck, you might be stuck in a model or a way of thinking that isn't useful to you right now. So my first dare for you is to question your models always. Again, it doesn't mean you can't be attached to them and really believe them, because some of them are super useful, but a lot of things aren't. And a lot of things, as you grow and progress as a human, they're no longer useful to you. So you have to let go. The next concept here is about memory. So a lot of us think about memory as a file cabinet. I have an interaction with you, and that goes into the file banks. But that's not how the brain works. So the brain, and also, I'm not a scientist, so everything I'm saying today is bullshit. You don't believe any of this, okay? I've created this model of reality myself, and that's what I use to make life interesting and useful. So, but the brain works, its memory banks are like a storyteller. So you have an interaction with somebody and you think of it one way, and then the brain is like, it gets on this hamster wheel and it starts to reinterpret that, that memory, and it adds detail and builds stories around that. And it's not entirely useful sometimes. If you talk to like a friend from childhood and a memory that's like very vivid in your mind, you could have that same conversation, go find that friend and have that, tell that story, and they could have a completely different story. That's how the brain just works. It's weird. So, no, yeah. If mistakes were made, memory helps us remember that they were made by somebody else. So this is also another thing that happens in the mind, is we build these stories around ourselves that make us the hero. And that's not always the case. I fuck up all the time. And I have to be reminded of that. I have an awesome family and an awesome staff that tells me I'm full of shit, and I love it. Because it's easy to, you meet these people who profess to be the greatest creative people in the world. And, nobody can do these things that I do. And, like, calm it down a little bit. You don't have to be the best or the greatest, except unless you're Muhammad Ali. Thank you, Ben, for reminding me of that. Confabulation, distortion, and plain forgetting are the foot soldiers of memory, and they are summoned to the front lines when the totalitarian ego wants to protect us from the pain and embarrassment of actions that are dissonant to our core self-image. This is another amazing book that is really good for helping you understand how the mind works. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Her reality was completely different than Jon's. Yep, every type of bigotry, every dogmatic ideology that allows us to kill other people with a clear conscience, every stupid cult, every superstition, written religion, every kind of ignorance in the world, all results from not realizing that our perceptions are gambles. That's how the brain works. So again, it's great to have a belief system that helps ground you in the world that you live in. But when you take that belief system as reality and other people's reality are lesser than yours, you're doing something wrong. Another concept here is a way of thinking about the English language that a few writers called E-prime. So that is, it gets rid of the is a prescriptive version of the English language that excludes all forms of the verb to be. So if we say Jason was full of shit in his talk today, what this kind of twisting of the language would be, Jason seemed full of shit in his talk today. So what that does is acknowledges that I didn't really enjoy this talk, but my reality isn't everyone's reality. So he seems full of shit. Sorry, you still have to listen to me. Okay, so dare number 2, you know nothing. So admit it. It's okay. It's okay to not be the best. It's okay to not be the most creative. It's okay to, I don't know, to be humble, I guess. So I dare you. All right. So we've all heard about compound interest. This is another concept where this is the chapter 3, I guess. So saving money when you're young, this is the power of compound interest, okay? Investor 1 starts at age 25, sets aside $5,000 per year for 10 years. When I made $18,000 a year at U of L, I could not have done this, so I don't know who these people are. But you see that like this sacrifice that you make early in life leads to some really awesome outcomes. This is the enthusiasm curve for projects. So everyone's super excited about a project. Holy shit, it's harder than it looks. This sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. It seems to be working. The enthusiasm goes up. You realize how much work is actually left, and the enthusiasm tanks. People quit. People get in fights. They get mad at you. But eventually you succeed. So what I'm getting at here is the concept of suffering intentionally. So this is a concept that was developed by a guy named Gurdjieff in the early 1900s. He was a metaphysical guru kind of guy. He had some concepts that have stuck with me through my life. But the idea here is that you have a finite amount of suffering that's going to happen in your life. You have to go through it. That's part of what life is suffering. So if you suffer intentionally, then you actually put that suffering into a good place that works for you. So those two examples of, the enthusiasm curve on a project, it's really easy to give up and just go back to whatever you were doing before that project happened because it was hard. But if you suffer through it intentionally, then the payoff is going to be super great. Same thing with saving money when you're young or even old. I'm still bad at it. It's the idea of suffering. So if you kind of choose where you suffer, it's going to pay off later in life. I use this a lot when it comes to, because I've got a pretty big team. I've got lots of clients. For me, this really comes up on a daily basis in terms of difficult conversations. So if I choose to not suffer and not have that difficult conversation with somebody, then I'm actively choosing to push off that suffering later when it gets a lot worse. So that is, if somebody's not, they need to step up as a team member or something. If you just let that slide because you don't want to have that difficult conversation, you're actually doing that person a disservice and yourself. I've seen things crash into a wall because people refuse to have honest conversations with each other. So Kevin Hart, he's awesome. I don't know how much you know this guy and his story, but he's great. So each struggle in the present is preparing you for something else in the future. So grab it, hold on to it, suffer through it. Know that you're doing that intentionally. It's the hard work, and something will pay off for you afterwards. There's a million ways that could work. But again, this is something I think about a lot in my life, is that, we're going to suffer. We're going to have to do things that are hard. Do we want to pick those things, or do we want to let the universe pick them for us? There are two very different types of suffering: intentional or conscious suffering, or as Gurdjieff calls it, stupid suffering. Tough one. So I dare you to suffer intentionally. Have those difficult conversations. Put that money into a savings account or a stock account. Tell somebody they're full of shit, like me. Okay, next concept. Who remembers Houdini? Yeah, that's right. From this wonderful song, "The Freaks Come Out at Night." If you don't know that song, you should look it up. It's wonderful. Being yourself has ridiculous amounts of payoff. And I didn't realize this, when I was crazy punk rocker, when I had my dreadlocks, some of those pieces of my past I hid from people that I thought would judge me. And some of the things that I like to do and whatnot are things that, again, that my model of reality is that I'm some weirdo that lives over here and nobody's going to appreciate this other stuff that I do. I told my old business partner once, I've got some arm tattoos. I'm like, hey, should I wear a long sleeve shirt to these meetings that we're going to? And he told me, he said, Jason, if these people don't want to do business with you because you've got tattoos, I don't want to do business with them. I was like, holy shit, you can say that? I thought you had to say yes to everything. So eventually I kind of let go of those individual pieces of my life that I'd enjoyed and kind of put them all together and celebrated all of them. That picture of me with the heavy metal hair, I hid in a closet for 20 years because I was so embarrassed of it. I just went to Croatia and Greece for 5 weeks over summer. And it was, I kind of dared myself to try to work remotely from Greece. So we did 2 weeks in Croatia and my wife went home and I stayed in Greece alone because I wanted to do it. It was I felt like I could get my work done there. I wanted an adventure like that. And if I wasn't completely one with myself, I would have been too afraid to do that. What would my clients think? What would my staff think? What if I injure myself alone? All of those fears, it was the most amazing experience. And then a friend of mine that runs a website in the Netherlands who's like, dude, your story's amazing. Can I publish it on my website? It's like, I guess. Is this interesting? Okay. When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everybody will respect you. It's okay. Like whatever weird hobby that you've got that you think people will judge you by, dude, it's fine. Like, and we should celebrate each other's uniqueness and weirdness. It's a crazy, diverse, interesting world out there. So the more we celebrate those differences, the better we're going to be as humans. So I dare you to fly your freak flag. It's something that I've like, I still have trouble with this because again, I love weird music. I love rave parties. I love festivals and I don't know, books that don't make any sense to other people, but I celebrate that now instead of being embarrassed by it. And my last dare, next slide, let go of that which no longer serves you. All these models of reality, all these ways of thinking that might have you frustrated or scared or timid about trying something new or walking through a door that opens in your life. There's a real good chance that there's something in your model of reality that is holding you back from doing that or experiencing it. Let it go. Let it go. Keep the ones that do serve you. I'm not saying your whole reality is non-existent, which it is, but it's okay. And then my last, second to the last, I love this quote. It makes me happy. You are precisely as big as what you love and precisely as small as what you allow to annoy you. It's wonderful. Thank you. Hopefully that wasn't too weird for our first Creative Mornings back in person.
Thank you so much, Jason. And I love that. Fly your freak flag. Thank you all so much for coming this morning, right on time at 10 a.m. to get you out of here caffeinated and donut belly. Do we want to do a round of questions real quick?
If anybody
wants to hang out and do it. Dude, Jordan.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite book in the world? Oh, goodness. That book on the KLF, it's like Chaos Money Magic. I expect, because I love music. It was like, I couldn't put it down because it depicted like these, like the top of the pop world where you're making all this money is, for musicians, that's exactly where you want to be. And this group of pranksters, like they made it to the top and then they burned it all down. And man, it's inspiring, right? It's so great. And, now in their old age, they might regret burning all that money. But it's, those kind of statements that stick with you. Long-term book, there's a book that's like super weird. It's called In Search of the Miraculous. And it's Ouspensky's, there was a writer and philosopher that essentially embedded with Gurdjieff for a few years and wrote a book about his knowledge and wisdom system. And it's real weird and kind of dense. He talks about planetary energy and all this weird shit. But it's also got some of these concepts in them that are like, oh my God, like that's super useful. So I reread that about every 2 or 3 years. Okay.
Thanks again for coming.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next month. Thank you.
Yay.